Right now, at this exact moment, the HOA president is throwing her daughter's $100,000 dream wedding on my private dock. No call, no permission, just pure entitled arrogance. 87 guests in designer gowns. Massive white tent. Champagne towers. String quartet. All on my waterfront that I've owned for decades. This is Delilah Thornbridge, the same nightmare who slapped me with thousands and bogus fines for unsafe dock conditions, on a structure that survived hurricanes since 1987. She thinks she can hijack my property for her perfect Instagram moment. The bride and groom are posing for million-dollar shots right now. Everyone laughing and clueless while I sit here with my coffee, staring at those thick anchor ropes holding everything together. Funny thing about unsafe dock conditions, sometimes they become a self-fulfilling prophecy. What would you do? Because what happens next will make every entitled Karen think twice before trespassing on someone else's property. I'm Meredith Chen Williams, 52, former marine biologist turned environmental consultant. After my divorce, I escaped to Lake Serenity with my inheritance and bought this perfect waterfront cottage with a hand-built dock that survived everything Mother Nature threw at it since 1987. The property sits on nearly an acre, massive for this neighborhood where most lots are cramped postage stamps. Sweet old Mrs. Kowalski sold to me specifically because I promised to preserve her late husband's handcrafted dock rather than tear it down for some McMansion monstrosity. This dock isn't just my morning coffee spot. It's my livelihood. I use it as a research platform for water quality testing contracts across 3 states. The irony? My marine engineering background from 30 years designing offshore platforms means I know exactly how much abuse these structures can handle. Then Hurricane Delilah moved in. Picture every HOA president nightmare. Add bleached blonde hair, designer everything, and a white Mercedes with vanity plates reading HOA. Her daughter Brittany just got engaged to some developer's spoiled rich kid, and apparently daddy's political connections weren't enough. Princess needed the perfect Instagram wedding venue. 3 weeks after I unpacked my last box, the harassment began. Violation notice number 1, unapproved dock modifications. $500 fine. The dock hadn't been touched since Bush Sr. was president, but apparently my railing height violated some imaginary standard. I marched over with original building permits proving everything was legal. Her response? Violation number 2, excessive algae growth beneath dock structure. $300 fine. She was literally fining me for algae that's been growing naturally since the Jurassic period. Mrs. Patterson, my 78-year-old neighbor, quietly revealed Delilah's real game. Systematic harassment forcing waterfront owners to sell cheap. Her husband's shell companies had already snatched 3 properties at 60 cents on the dollar for their luxury condo project. My deepwater dock access was the final piece. The violations escalated faster than my blood pressure. Mandatory inspections scheduled during my research trips. I returned to orange warning tags flapping like surrender flags, claiming my hurricane-tested dock was an immediate safety hazard. Security cameras caught their inspector spending 12 minutes on my property, mostly taking personal calls. New demand, $2,000 fine plus dock removal unless certified safe by their approved engineer. Plot twist, Delilah's brother-in-law, charging $3,500 for his expert opinion. Research revealed this family scam had condemned 6 waterfront structures in 2 years. All 6 properties mysteriously got purchased by Delilah's husband's companies at fire sale prices. I hired my own marine engineer who confirmed what I already knew. My dock exceeded safety standards by 40%. Filed state complaints. Organized neighborhood meetings revealing Delilah's selective enforcement. The community split. Original residents supported me. Newer residents feared property values would tank without proper enforcement. The showdown came at our monthly HOA meeting. Delilah's supporters packed the room, shouting down opposition while she smirked from her folding chair throne. They picked the wrong engineer to intimidate. 2 weeks later, I returned from a 3-day research contract to find my dock transformed into a disaster movie set. Orange condemned signs zip-tied to every post. Yellow caution tape wrapped around railings like crime scene decoration. The violation notice claimed, emergency inspection due to anonymous neighbor complaints about structural instability. Security footage told the real story. Their certified inspector spent 14 minutes on my property carefully staging photographs to make my hurricane-tested dock look dangerous. Here's what that inspection report didn't mention, something I discovered after digging through state contractor licensing records. Their independent inspector worked for the same engineering firm that would pocket $12,000 rebuilding my condemned dock. I'd seen this scam before in coastal development projects. Create the problem, sell the solution, split the profits. New demand, $3,500 fine plus complete dock removal within 15 days, or hire their approved contractor for emergency stabilization at highway robbery prices. When I laughed in her face, Delilah filed county complaints claiming my research equipment contaminated the lake. An environmental scientist contaminating the environment. The irony could have powered a small city. Time to play their game, but better. My background investigating offshore platform failures taught me that patterns reveal everything. 4 other waterfront properties had been condemned using identical inspection language. Word for word. Identical. Each property got purchased within 6 months by shell companies that traced back to Delilah's husband's development empire. I compiled evidence packages like I was building a federal case because honestly I probably was. State HOA oversight complaints. Ethics violations against their pet inspector. Documentation of the systematic property grab scheme that would make organized crime blush. Mrs. Patterson became my secret weapon, providing 35 years of historical dock photos proving 0 structural changes. Delilah's counterassault was immediate and personal. Anonymous calls to my consulting clients warning about my legal troubles. 3 contracts canceled within a week, $8,000 in lost income. She was systematically destroying my ability to fight back by cutting off my funding. Smart, vicious, and probably illegal. Then came the revelation that changed everything. I was at the county courthouse when I overheard Delilah in the planning office. Final approval depends on clearing the Sullivan property. The seller foundation interferes with drainage easement for the entire development. A man's voice. Our investors have committed $12 million to this project. If you can't deliver clear title to that central parcel, we'll need other options. $12 million. Delilah. The veteran is proving resistant, but my husband's position provides advantages. Code enforcement, health inspections. Plus, her environmental background makes her vulnerable to regulatory challenges. I recorded the next 10 minutes. Delilah discussing falsified reports, bribed officials and planned accidents involving waterfront structures. She was planning to destroy my dock and make it look like an accident. I had her confession to conspiracy, bribery, fraud, and planned property destruction. Federal intervention. The fake EPA letter was her biggest mistake. U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Emergency Response Division, demanding immediate inspection of my unpermitted hazardous waste facility, with threats of $10,000 daily fines. I own a pH meter and some sample bottles, not Chernobyl. 20 minutes of research revealed the beautiful truth. The entire letter was fabricated. The case number was fake. The investigating agent didn't exist. Someone had committed federal mail fraud to intimidate me. Federal mail fraud carries serious prison time. Game-changing mistake, Princess Delilah. While celebrating this legal jackpot, my insurance agent called. My homeowner's policy was canceled effective immediately due to fraudulent application and undisclosed high-risk activities. Anonymous photos of my dock with fabricated damage reports claim structural failures that would cost $50,000 to repair. No insurance means no mortgage compliance, which means foreclosure within 90 days. Delilah wasn't just trying to force me out. She was systematically destroying my financial foundation. Then the envelope that destroyed Delilah's world arrived, hidden among credit card offers like a ticking time bomb. Official letterhead from Clearwater County Clerk's office about a property research request I'd filed weeks ago. What I found was a nuclear weapon. Original 1967 Lake Community Covenant creating the Clearwater Cove Waterfront Preservation Trust. A perpetual federal conservation easement protecting the entire lake ecosystem from commercial development. Every single property in our neighborhood was permanently protected by federal environmental law. No condos. No resort. No development within 200 feet of water. Ever. Delilah's husband had spent 5 years and millions assembling properties for a project that federal law made permanently impossible. But here's where it gets beautiful. Mrs. Patterson found meeting minutes revealing the conservation easement's most powerful protection. Explicit federal authority for environmental monitoring and research activities on all waterfront properties. My water quality testing wasn't just legal. It was federally protected conservation work. Every violation Delilah filed was federal harassment of protected environmental research. The conservation easement documentation revealed something else crucial. The dock's original 1967 construction included removable sections designed for winter storm protection. Marine-grade quick-release mechanisms that could separate the platform into floating sections during extreme weather events. The same federal easement that protected my environmental research also protected my right to maintain the dock's historical configuration and safety features, including those very special winter storm protocols. Delilah wanted the perfect waterfront wedding venue. She was about to get exactly what she deserved. Testing the mechanism with sandbags, I couldn't stop grinning at how smoothly the separation worked. The outer section floated perfectly stable thanks to sealed chambers underneath. No one would drown, but everyone would definitely get an unexpected swimming lesson. The legal beauty was even more satisfying than the engineering. You have federal authority to prevent unauthorized commercial use of protected conservation property, my environmental lawyer confirmed. Activating historical safety mechanisms to protect environmental research from illegal interference, that's not revenge. That's law enforcement. Mrs. Patterson casually mentioned Brittany's wedding date, Labor Day weekend. Same weekend as our annual Lake Community Festival. Perfect timing for maximum witness coverage and media documentation. I made strategic calls to EPA colleagues mentioning the ongoing investigation and potential commercial violations of federal conservation property. Federal environmental investigators would just happen to be in the neighborhood with cameras ready. Wedding day arrived with chaos that looked like a military operation disguised as a fairy tale. The invasion began at dawn. Catering trucks, equipment rentals, florist vans, and a limousine that cost more than most people's cars, all descending on my property like they owned it. By 8 a.m., my dock was unrecognizable under layers of white silk, crystal chandeliers, and enough professional catering equipment to feed a small army. The platform groaned audibly under weight, already testing its 60-year-old engineering limits. I watched from my kitchen window, sipping coffee and counting violations of federal conservation law with the satisfaction of someone holding a royal flush. Professional wedding photographer snapping hundreds of photos? Unauthorized commercial use. Check. Catering company setting up full kitchen operations? Violation of environmental protection regulations. Check. Sound equipment and electrical systems without environmental permits? Multiple federal violations. Check. Every photo they took was evidence for federal prosecution. The ceremony began at 2 p.m. with guests filling every folding chair on the platform. 87 people according to my count, well over the dock's safe capacity rating. Federal investigators positioned across the lake documented everything with professional equipment while local festival goers gathered to watch what they thought was a romantic waterfront ceremony. None of them suspected they were about to witness the most spectacular enforcement of environmental protection law in county history. As the minister pronounced Brittany and her developer prince husband and wife, guests crowded toward the platform's end for photography. The dock's groaning protests were audible even over wedding music. The bride and groom positioned themselves at the absolute end for sunset photos with the entire wedding party surrounding them. Catering staff rolled out the elaborate wedding cake. Perfect weight concentration at the dock's most vulnerable point. Everything aligned for the most satisfying demonstration of conservation law enforcement and poetic justice that federal investigators had ever documented. At exactly 4:17 p.m., while 87 wedding guests crowded onto the platform's far end for the perfect golden hour photograph, I activated the emergency separation protocol. The sound was subtle at first, just a metallic click echoing across the water as 60-year-old marine engineering did exactly what it was designed to do. 4 quick-release pins disengaged simultaneously, and the outer dock section became a floating platform carrying one very expensive wedding into the middle of Lake Serenity. For about 3 seconds, nobody realized what was happening. Then someone noticed the shoreline moving away. Why are we floating? That's when 87 people in formal wear realized they were stranded on a floating platform with no propulsion, no steering, and no way back to shore except swimming. The screaming started immediately. Brittany's beaded wedding gown transformed from fairy tale elegance to waterlogged disaster as she stumbled toward the platform's edge. The white silk tent collapsed as guests panicked, sending crystal chandeliers crashing into catering equipment and wedding cake flying everywhere. "What did you do?" Delilah shrieked from the main dock. "Bring them back right now." I emerged from my cottage holding a cup of coffee and the most important phone number in environmental law enforcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced calmly as federal investigators documented everything, "you're currently experiencing unauthorized commercial use of federally protected conservation property. I'm now exercising my legal authority under the Clearwater Cove Waterfront Preservation Trust to prevent violations of environmental protection law. The EPA investigator stepped out of his fishing boat with official credentials. "Ma'am, I'm Agent Rodriguez with the Environmental Protection Agency. We've been monitoring unauthorized commercial activity on this protected conservation site." Pure chaos erupted. On shore, Delilah's security guards, off-duty sheriff's deputies, suddenly realized they had zero jurisdiction over federal environmental crimes. On the floating platform, wedding guests in designer formal wear were calculating swimming distances while professional catering staff tried to prevent $10,000 of equipment from sliding into Lake Serenity. "This is illegal detention," shouted the groom's father. "Actually," Agent Rodriguez replied with satisfaction, "emergency separation of dock sections during unauthorized commercial use is specifically authorized under federal conservation easement regulations. The platform is structurally sound. Everyone is perfectly safe." The local fire department water rescue team arrived right on schedule, not to create emergency drama, but to provide safe transportation back to shore for wedding guests who preferred boats to swimming. Channel 7's news crew, originally positioned to cover the community festival, found themselves broadcasting live footage of federal environmental law enforcement in action. Watching Brittany's $10,000 wedding dress dissolve into lake water while her mother screamed accusations from shore, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from watching entitled bullies face consequences for the first time in their lives. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my perfectly restored dock, watching sunrise paint Lake Serenity the colors it was meant to be. The federal court proceedings wrapped up beautifully. Delilah received 18 months in federal prison plus $125,000 in restitution for mail fraud, environmental harassment, and conspiracy to violate conservation law. Her husband's development company was permanently barred from environmental projects and paid $2.3 million in fines for systematic property fraud. The HOA was officially dissolved and replaced with a voluntary conservation association guided by the original 1967 covenant. Property values recovered to fair market levels once the artificial suppression scheme ended. 3 displaced families returned using federal victim compensation funds. Lake water quality improved dramatically when illegal upstream development was halted. The dock became a model for community-based environmental monitoring that draws marine engineering students from 3 universities. The sweetest victory? Establishing the Clearwater Environmental Education Scholarship using recovered HOA funds. Annual awards for students pursuing marine biology, environmental science, or conservation law. The first recipient? Brittany herself. After her divorce and her mother's imprisonment, she enrolled in environmental restoration studies. Turns out watching your fairy tale wedding become a federal crime scene provides excellent motivation for understanding environmental protection law. She stopped by last month to apologize and thank me for the scholarship funding her education. We sat on the same dock where her wedding went sideways, talking about water quality monitoring and conservation easements like civilized people. "I never understood what my mother was doing to you and the other neighbors," she admitted. "I just wanted a perfect wedding and didn't ask where the perfect venue came from." Sometimes the biggest criminals are the ones who think political connections make them untouchable. But federal environmental law gives every citizen tools to fight corruption. You just have to be willing to do the research and stand up for what's right. 87 wedding guests floating away on a detached dock section. That's not something you see every day, even in HOA warfare. But the real story isn't the ruined designer gowns or the $10,000 of catering equipment sliding into Lake Serenity. It's how I turned 2 years of systematic harassment into 18 months of federal prison time for the bully. Most people would have folded after the fake EPA letter, the canceled insurance, or that ridiculous environmental terrorism arrest. But I kept digging until I found that 1967 conservation easement, 55 years of buried federal protection that made Delilah's entire property grab scheme legally impossible. Think about it. She spent millions assembling waterfront lots for a luxury development that federal law prohibited from day one. All that corruption, all that harassment for a project that could never be built. The dock separation wasn't just revenge. It was environmental law enforcement with a sense of humor. Have you ever checked if your property has conservation protections you don't know about? Because somewhere in dusty county records might be exactly what you need against your own neighborhood tyrants. If you enjoyed watching a corrupt HOA meet federal environmental law, hit that subscribe button for the HOA files. Because knowledge isn't just power, sometimes it's the perfect weapon. Drop your craziest HOA story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. Welcome to the HOA files, where homework beats harassment, and bullies learn that federal law doesn't care about your vanity plates.